Well, the US President Donald Trump is predicting a swift end to the war in Iran. And he says that it will be over quickly. Now, Trump's latest claim comes even as Tehran is yet to respond to a new US proposal to end the war. An Iranian foreign ministry spokesperson said that Tehran would convey its response to mediator Pakistan, while Iranian lawmaker Ibrahim Razaei described the proposal as more of an American wish list than a reality. Mohammad Baghir Ghalibaf, now that's Iran's parliament speaker and lead negotiator currently, also mocked reports that indicated that the two sides, US and Iran, were close to a deal, writing on social media in English that Operation Trust Me Bro failed. Well, Trump also threatened to restart the US bombing campaign in Iran, calling the possibility of Tehran agreeing to the latest US proposal a big assumption. But within hours, Trump claimed that Iran wanted to make a deal.
So I think we won. Now it's only a question of, look, if we left right now Iran, it would take them 20 years to rebuild. You would call that, we're in good shape, right?
Fantastic.
We're in good shape. And now we're doing well. Now we have to get what we have to get. If we don't do that, we'll have to go a big step further. But with that being said, they want to make a deal. We've had very good talks over the last 24 hours. And it's very possible that we'll make a deal. Yeah.
Repeatedly, Trump has played up the prospect of an agreement with Iran to end the war. So far, it's always been without success. The two sides remain at odds over a variety of different and difficult issues, such as Iran's nuclear ambitions and its control of the Strait of Hormuz. Trump has halted a short-lived military operation to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, raising hopes for a deal. Trump's abrupt pause reportedly came after a backlash from Gulf allies, especially Saudi Arabia. Now, this is as per a report emanating from the US itself. This is an NBC report citing two US officials that said that Saudi Arabia informed the US that it would not allow Washington and the US military to fly aircraft from an airbase southeast of Riyadh or to fly through Saudi airspace to support this effort of Project Freedom. And other reports said that Kuwait had also denied the US use of its bases and airspace for the operation. Trump had abruptly paused Project Freedom earlier in the week after Iran responded with military force to the operation. The US president said that a peace deal with Iran was close and that a naval blockade against the country remained in place. Other reports said that Kuwait had also denied the US use of its bases and airspace for the operation. Another report, and this one is from Washington Post, again from the US, said that Iran hit more US military assets than were reported or declared by the US. The report, based on analysis of satellite images, claimed that Iranian strikes destroyed at least 228 structures or pieces of equipment at US military sites across the region. And just to give you a little more detail there, it report suggests 228 damaged structures across West Asia, equipment damaged at 15 US bases, and that included 217 buildings and 11 military assets. Now, the amount of destruction is far larger than what has been publicly acknowledged by the US government or previously even reported. Will the war with Iran be over quickly, as Donald Trump suggests? I'm going to be discussing this now with Chris Blackburn, security analyst, joining us from London. Mr. Blackburn, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks so much for making time. Let's start right off. These reports that have emanated from the US, one suggesting that they've taken far more damage than they have acknowledged, and the other one suggesting that it was Saudi Arabia and other Gulf allied nations that said, no, you will not use our airspace, and that caused the Project Freedom to be halted within a day of being launched. Give me your assessment. Do you think this war will end quickly?
Hi, Siobhan. Thank you for having me. Well, we simply don't know. We've seen a build-up of a sort of US focus on Iran over the last sort of 2 years. The Israelis and the Americans obviously are deciding that they want to go to halt Iran's sort of nuclear ambitions. They want to halt Iran's use of proxy forces in the region. Those are the main goals. And Operation Epic Fury, as the US-Israeli operation was called, was to get those two objectives, with the regime change being the central one. However, they have failed to reach that. Yes, they've massively degraded, and Trump's right, they've degraded Iran's capabilities. But for the next level, we are seeing either there's going to be mediation with Pakistan or other nations, or we'll see a massive escalation. I think what we've seen is the reports coming out of the Middle East or West Asia has been that certain Gulf countries, especially Saudi Arabia, we've heard conflicting reports from them that they want the US and Israel to finish the job, but we're also seeing reports that they're unhappy with the incoherent strategy and the slow rollout, because obviously Iran is fired at the UAE, Dubai, and it's fired in places like Saudi Arabia. So these massive damages that we haven't seen or haven't been reported by the US, that's slowly trickling out. We don't know the full story that's happening, or what actually Gulf allies are saying to the US behind the scenes. So we've got conflicting reports. Nobody really knows what's going on unless they're part of the decision making within those countries. So us as analysts are having to read the tea leaves, and it's very difficult because the mediation that's happening with Pakistan is giving Iran breathing space. And I think at the minute, the optics look like Iran has actually got the upper hand here. Yes, we know they've been degraded, but they're surviving. And I think for Iran, this is a massive success.
Mr. Blackburn, let me come in there with a counter. Let me actually bring in the US perspective. I'm doing this for the sake of our audiences because Operation Epic Fury, of course, that's something that did not get Iran to capitulate, but there is no doubt that Iran has taken a massive amount of damage in terms of the number of deaths and also the number of deaths that they committed to, saying that we are willing to give up our own lives for the sake of Iran. And that kind of a mindset is not that resonates in the US. US has a different mindset, but this is one that they're unable to get past in a military manner. But let me come to the fact that Operation Economic Fury, as they're calling it now, that is really creating issues for Iran. This is a statement that came out from the Iranian president himself saying, we urge the US to remove their military threats from the region. This was in a dialogue with the Iraqi Prime Minister-elect. And that is where he put this statement across so that it reaches US. But given that US has caused a major amount of damage and the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz regarding Iranian ports, that is damaging and hurting Iran. Do you really feel Iran is that badly or that much in position right now to negotiate?
Well, yeah, I think you're right. Iran has been massively degraded, but it's also shown it's a massive resilience. Unless the US is prepared to launch an invasion and take territory, especially in the south of Iran, in the Strait of Hormuz, the US and Iran will obviously there's room to negotiate, I think, because the US doesn't want to commit to taking territory because there could be the potential for a massive bloodbath in the region. And so we're oscillating between whether they're going to come to an agreement or there's going to be a massive escalation. And I think that's the worry. The Gulf states are worrying, does the US have the resolve? We've seen the resilience of Iran to counter and to at least provide a threat with these missile attacks and attacks on shipping. But does the US have the resolve to actually finish the job or to really escalate things? And I think that's the we're in a state of limbo at the moment, and the mediation and the talks. The US uses this uncertainty for its advantage, and I think it's going to be difficult moving forward and seeing exactly what's going to happen down the road.
Mr. Blackman, from there, let me take it to US allies, because, and in your assessment, do you think it would be fair to say that US is unable to carry out these unilateral actions without taking allies into confidence? And let me quickly substantiate what my question is. There were initial, and this is a number of weeks back, Italy, Spain, France, they all made it clear, along with other European nations, that do not use our airspace to get us involved in this war with Iran. It was very clear the main allies, they did not want to have any part of it. Australia and Japan also for the large part said, we don't want to be part of it. South Korea, US took their air defenses, sold to South Korea, took them back to get them deployed to the Middle East. But even that was not enough to safeguard US assets or their Gulf allies in the region from Iranian projectiles, on incoming Iranian attacks. Similar sentiments are now being raised by Saudi Arabia in this NBC report that suggests Saudi Arabia made it clear, and even Kuwait, do not use our airspace. And this was within a day of launching Project Freedom, because on that same day when they launched it, there was a barrage of missiles going in towards UAE. Iran did not claim responsibility for that, but it was understood that it came in from Iran. Iran still says it was not them. But overall, when you see US not getting the backing that it has wanted, and all those bad remarks being passed on towards NATO that came in from Donald Trump, perhaps a pressure tactic to get NATO involved, they still didn't get involved. What does that tell us about how far US can take this unilaterally? Because clearly no one wants to have this along with the US. They don't want that heat from Iran, or don't want to get involved in the Strait of Hormuz. They want their oil more than a war. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think it's been because the United States is... The war aims have constantly changed. Obviously, Epic Fury. The many senior Democrats in the United States are saying it's been an incoherent strategy. It's alienated allies, and effectively they've not met their objectives. So I think that the lack of certainty and the lack of resolve in this changing landscape means that certain countries won't sign up to it, because basically, if the United States isn't prepared to really go full and escalate and get these objectives met, or at least look like they're going to achieve these objectives, the rest of the world's basically just sitting and waiting, because they don't want to get involved in a messy war with Iran, because it is hurting everyone. It's hurting the global economy. It's the loss of life in Iran is really stacking up. So I think when you see the sort of these missile attacks on these modern, really highly developed nations, it's really causing a lot of anxiety around the world. And I think that basically we're looking for US leadership, we're looking for clarity, and when you don't have that clarity, it becomes messy. And I think that's what we're seeing. The US is shifting the goalposts every 5 minutes, and that is allowing Iran and allowing other nations to sort of to get an upper hand, or to push the US and say, listen, this is bad. This is bad for the world. It's bad for the globe. And I think this is where nations such as China are looking and saying, well, if the US can't resolve this, how is it going to resolve things if things get hot in with Taiwan and other areas? So I think it's a very dangerous period for the world.
A lack of clarity and a loss of credibility. That's something that I've heard from a number of our guests who have joined me and had this conversation and exchange with me on Point and Counterpoint. Mr. Blackburn, thank you so much for making time and joining us. We'll need to wait and watch, because with divergent statements coming in from the US administration, the US president himself rather, it's very difficult to gauge where they want to go with this, and a lack of clarity on the objectives, which still lasts all these weeks after February 28th. Chris Blackburn, thanks so much for making time. More to discuss. Would love to speak with you again.